All right, everyone. Welcome to Thursday night class. Tonight is going to be class number 7 in a long discourse we've been learning on a passage of the Zohar that explains the Shabbos meals. Tonight is number 7. This is not easy information. This stuff is super high, deep, esoteric, and Kabbalistic. This is like as advanced you can get in deep mystical Kabbalah and mysticism. So, my introduction over here is that if you're popping in on number 7, because you just found this channel, if you like to close your eyes and just allow your soul to absorb godly concepts, even if you're not understanding it, that's wonderful. If you're a very, very great Hasidic mind and thinker and you've learned a lot, be my join in this class. If, however, you're new to this, to Hasidism, or even if you're not so new, but you're not very advanced, I would highly recommend to listen to the 6 first classes and then get to this one, because this is a real build-up. This might be the last class if I'm able to finish the whole piece tonight. I hope so. We're going to try to learn it a little quicker. So the point, this is a passage of the Zohar in Parshas Yisro, which, since in Yisro God gives us the mitzvah of Shabbat, part of the 10 commandments, and the Zohar explains the spiritual significance of those meals, the 3 meals that we have in Shabbos, and each meal has its own character, has its own spiritual dynamic. And the Alter Rebbe, the first Rebbe of Chabad, Shneur Zalman of Liadi, gives us the Zohar is really a closed book. To understand the Zohar, you need commentary. The Alter Rebbe gives commentary and explains the Zohar. The commentary is found in a special book called the Sidur in Dach, which Sidur means the prayer book, but it's not just a regular prayer book. It's a prayer book with Hasidic interpretation. There, this discourse is divided into 3 discourses. One pertains, even though it's one passage of the Zohar, and the Alter Rebbe, the one who gave this commentary, said this as one long discourse, as a commentary. He went through the passage of the Zohar and he stops by piece, each sentence, and gives some deep commentary on it. When he said it in one shot, but when his son, the Mittler Rebbe, the second Rebbe of Chabad, printed it in the book, he divided it. The first part he put into the Friday night prayer part. The second part of the discourse, the passage of the Zohar that speaks about the second meal, which is the second part of the discourse, became the second discourse, which is inserted in the Sidur, where it belongs during the Shabbos day meal. And then this last passage that we're learning now is all about the third meal of Shabbos. Shabbos late afternoon meal before sunset. That's the holiest, really godliest, most incredible time of Shabbat, called Raiva Deraiv, and the will of all wills. And there's a passage of the Zohar explaining the unique energy of that time. And what we're going to do now is we're going to be learning that passage and the commentary. And again, I'm going to try very hard not to review too much, because we really have to move. So if I'm making a strong disclaimer that you're not meant to understand this if you didn't listen to the earlier classes, and I'm going to discipline myself not to explain too much. How do you like that? I usually don't. I have a hard time doing that, but I'm going to do that today. Or at least I'm going to make an attempt to do that today. Here we go. So what did we learn in the last classes? What we learned in the last classes, in one line, is that the 3 meals of Shabbos are 3 levels of divine pleasure that are revealed. The first level of divine pleasure is God enjoying the work that he did. It's like a person who does work. When you complete the work that you do, you're building something, you're forging, making a piece of jewelry, a painting, an artist doing something. When you complete it, when it's over and it fits exactly what your initial idea was, you become filled with pleasure. So that's the pleasure that happens on Friday night, and that reoccurs every Friday night, because every week God recreates the world, and every Friday night the creation brings God immense pleasure and delight at the conclusion of the week. So that's the Friday night pleasure. Now, the one responsible for creating the world is the attribute of Malchus, of kingship, which is called sometimes the apple orchard, Chakal Tapuchin Kadishin. And that's why in the Zohar passage that we say Friday night, we call that meal the meal of the apple orchard. What that really means, it's the meal, which means it's the pleasure of the Shekhinah. And Kabbalistically, what that means is that Malchut, which is the Shekhinah, which is the source of creation, which is the feminine element of the divine, that is most imminent in creation, is now, when she gets released, she's engaged in the process of investing herself into time and space and into all the details of time and space. And when Shabbos enters Friday night enters, that energy is released from its entanglement in the world, and it's like a person resting from the work that he does, and his invested energies are reclaimed back to their soul. It returns back. It's like you invest your mind, your emotions in something, you let go, and you allow it to return. What happens then is the project energy gets reconnected to the original pleasure that drove it, and now that pleasure in this very expansive state. In Kabbalistic terminology, that means that Malchus rises into Keter. Keter is the inner dimension of the soul, the place of pleasure. Malchus is the power of engagement, investment into the outside, like kingship. Kingship is all about ruling and engaging with outside of the person. And the idea is that the project now reaches its ultimate fulfillment and reconnects to the original pleasure. That's the tremendous cosmic energy rise that happens on Friday night. Now, what happens on Shabbos day? Shabbos morning. Shabbos morning, we eat the second meal. We say our prayers, and then we eat the second meal. Second meal is a much higher meal. It's a much higher level of pleasure. Because what happens on the second day is that Malchut, that has risen into Keter, which is the crown, that crown rises into the crown of all crowns, into the ultimate Atik Yom. What does that mean? When one gets fulfillment from a pleasure, we discussed in the earlier, again, I'm doing very brief review so that we have just context. When one gets fulfillment from a pleasure, it's usually because you had an initial dream of producing something, making something, creating something. When you complete the work, and that pleasure has been fulfilled, it's rubbing on that pleasure, it's stimulating that pleasure, and that's where the pleasure is. But that pleasure, which was the pleasure in the project, is only a ray of the ocean of pleasure that a person really has in the essence of their soul. There's a much deeper pleasure, the pleasure of the essence of being. Now, that pleasure is what motivates the pleasure of the particular project. Because, people have so many different things that they can then find, or different projects that they're working with, the things that give them pleasure. So which means each pleasure is only a ray and a limited expression of a much deeper, more primary pleasure, a more essential pleasure. And usually, when do you find pleasure? Not the moment you complete a task, because the moment you complete the task, you're enjoying your fulfillment in that you've seen the project through to its beauty, to its completion. So it's what you're feeling is a particular pleasure. You sleep over it overnight, you wake up in the morning, and suddenly you feel so good about being alive. You just feel content with yourself. That's a much deeper pleasure, because the pleasure is not in detail. It's the specific pleasure that now triggers an awareness and opens up a person to a higher, more inner pleasure of just feeling delighted in being. Now take that to God. That happens on Shabbos morning. That the pleasure, the individual pleasure that God has from the creation of the world, now that pleasure goes inward into the essence of essence and triggers the ultimate pleasure of God. And therefore the Shabbos morning pleasure is the highest, deepest pleasure in the Ein Sof of the Shabbos meal. That's why that meal is called the meal of Atika Kadisha, which means the meal of the crown itself, of the innermost, of the ancient one. Ancient one is referring to God pre-engagement with any particular element of the cosmos. God's kind of being completely contained within himself in the utter infinity. So that's the Shabbos day meal. What happens by the third meal, and this is where we're going to pick up now, and we learned about it briefly. The third meal is the same like the second meal, only there is a different nuance. In the second meal, that pleasure is taking place in a very inward, hidden, transcendental place. God is privately in his essence filled with the light of himself, like the Zohar refers to it, Shashuyei HaMelech. I don't know if it's a passage of the Zohar, but in Kabbalah it uses the term Shashuyei HaMelech Ba'atzmusai. The king is delighting in his essence. So that's taking place deep inside the Ein Sof. It's not projected outward into the cosmic order. Even the outer levels of the divine can only experience that pleasure because everything is being suctioned inward, everything is being pulled back in. But where they are in their position, in which level of projection these attributes are, the party is not happening there. The party is happening in the inner sanctuary of God's very self. When it comes to the third meal, that pleasure emanates outward and fills the entire projected order of all the chambers and all the worlds and initially all the elements of the divine personality become filled with this essential pleasure. In other words, in the second meal, everything is sucked into the essence. In the third meal, the essence is projected outward. And that's why, in terms of the holiness of the world, there is never such a holy moment like the third meal. Because although the second meal might be deeper, the second meal is in a state of withdrawal. The third meal is in a state of permeating. The essence of God is permeating existence. And now and that's why it's called the meal of the Ze'er Anpin. The Ze'er Anpin is God, the six emotions of God, which make up the main structure of the divine personality. So that is infused with the pleasure of the essence. Okay. So when is the pleasure of the essence most experienced by us and our consciousness? By the third meal of Shabbat. And that's where we're going to pick up now, where he's going to start explaining what happens then. Tochazi. So the Zohar says, this is on page 600. This is called Seder Seudas Shlishis. This is where he goes to explain the order of the third meal of Shabbos. It's interesting that in Chabad, he doesn't speak about it over here, but in Chabad, the custom is that this meal is so high that we can't even eat it. So it's the non-eaten meal. Now, halachically, you have to eat. So therefore, even if you're a Chabad chassid, you must eat something. So, but you don't have, it's not, the custom is really not to wash, but you can eat fruits. You have to eat. You're obligated to eat. Because it's very serious. A person must eat the three meals. But the point over here is that this is a pleasure that's so deep and so high that that's a Chabad custom. He doesn't bring it over here. It's discussed in late Memorim of Chassidus, and not for now. Tachazi kamsi. The Zohar says, in all 6 days of Shabbos, in all the 6 days of the week, regular weekdays, when the time of the mincha services come, the afternoon prayer, dina takifa shalta. There is harsh judgments that dominating. V'chol dinin misarin, and all judgments are awakened. That means afternoon time is spiritually a time where there's a lot of judgment in the world. Because it's morning is a time of kindness, and light is increasing, and there's a great kindness. In the afternoon is when the sun begins to set, to move towards setting. So then the element of judgment starts to kick into the world. God runs the world with two primary emotions, kindness and judgment. So the afternoon time belongs to the time of judgment. That's why it's if you need to pray for something, you're better prayer in the morning than in the afternoon. It's a time of more. It's like when God is it's like when you need something from someone, you always want to catch them when they're relaxed and they're in a happy state. When they're nervous, you don't want to ask for something. So we do pray in the afternoon, but it's Isaac's prayer. It requires much more fear and awe, and So usually, he says, that's what he's saying. Usually on a regular day of the week, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, every day of the week, afternoon time is a time of judgments. But on the day of Shabbos, the Zohar says, when Mincha time arrives, not only is there no judgment, but the will of all wills is present. There is no time when God is in such a good mood, when he is so pleasant, when he is so elated, when he is so in such a state of satisfaction. That's the point. There is a deep satisfaction, the will of fulfillment, content. The level of content that fills the divine being is so perfect that there isn't even a trace of judgment in the world. Not even. So it's completely opposite than that very same time on every other day of the week. Every other day of the week is extreme judgment during that time. And on Shabbos, Mincha time, it's more content and more pleasantness and more kindness and compassion and goodwill, more than the entire Shabbos itself. It's like the peak of willfulness coming from God. It's a very powerful time. Va'atika Kadisha, and the ancient one, Gal Yeratzin delay, is revealing his will. That means the goodwill and the pleasure is flowing. That you see, as opposed to the Shabbos morning where the will is there, but it's inward. It's like a person is very happy, but no one sees it. Here is where he's allowing it to emerge outward. He's opening up and flowing outward. And therefore, v'chol dinin miskafian, all judgments that are there, which means all prosecuting elements and all accusations. There's a lot of accusations and there's a lot of things. Everything relaxes. There's no knots. There's no tight muscles. Everything is purely like free and flowing. And there is goodwill and joy in all realms. Shabbos by that's why before we got the Torah by Shabbos by Mincha, we say a very powerful verse. Vani tefilasi, and I my prayer, L'cha Hashem, to you God. It's a time of will. There is no time of grace and of goodwill like Shabbos Saturday afternoon. V'chadu bekula, and there is and the goodwill is to be found. V'chadu bekula, and there is joy everywhere. Piddush. Now he explains. So that's the passage of the Zohar. Now the Alter Rebbe is in the commentary. Hagam, even though that usually the prayer of Mincha, which is the afternoon service, which we do every day. Yitzchak Tiknu, Isaac was the one who instituted it. And as we know, Isaac is the personification of judgment, opposite of Abraham, who is kindness. Which is the attribute of judgment. And from this place can come harsh judgment. Isaac himself is not harsh judgment. He's an element of judgment, but a sublime judgment. But from it can come, in a way of like evolution, some pretty harsh judgments which can call for punishment and stuff like that. Ki Yitzchak, like Isaac, sheyatzim emene Esav, like we see physically, that although Yitzchak was a great tzaddik, and even though he was a strict person, Yitzchak was a strict person, but it was a holy strictness. From him came a son, Esav, who was a murderer. That means he was a real, like, very, very harsh human being, which is also called Sisvisa, the Dahava. The Zohar refers to that as the dregs of gold. Gold versus silver. Silver is kindness. Silver is a more mellow type of metal. It looks like water. Which water is kindness. Gold has a certain fiery appearance. It has a certain intensity, and that's why, and gold is and therefore gold is on the side of Gevura, which is judgment and might and strength. But in the gold, there are dregs. The dregs of the gold represent unholy judgments that can come from holy judgment, impure judgments. It's like nervous energy, which then later, doesn't bring any good. Kaniskalial, as we said earlier. Avol. So you got some of that stuff floating around every day in the afternoon. Nervous energy. You see it by people also, because in the morning people are more relaxed because they're just starting their day. But in the time afternoon, they had already, this guy upset them and this one to them. They have already a certain tension already. There's tension in the air by the time you get to the afternoon. Avol b'Shabbos, but on Shabbos, she'ein adin and sholtin klal, the judgments don't have any dominion at all. And the reason for that is because the flow that is flowing into the universe is from such a deep place of God's essence, where in the essence of God there's only light, there's only blessing, and there's only goodness. All the knots that happen above, all the tension, happen in the more external levels of the sphirot, of the attributes. As we're getting more engaged with the world, which requires some discipline and judgment, sometimes you get an overdose of that, and there is a tension. But on the levels of Keter is only Rachamim Pshutim, it's only pure. So since on Shabbos, the innermost of God is projected outward, it's almost like God opens up to his deepest essence. And when that happens, it smooths out any knots and anything like that. And that is Kabbalistically, that means Ha'aras HaKeser, because the light of Keter, which is the Ein Sof, and not just Keter, as we discussed, the innermost of the crown. Where is it shining? B'Chachma. It's shining into the Sphirot, first in Chachma, as we're going to see. Chachma is the first of the spheres, which is wisdom. And via Chachma, it flows through the entire divine human, the entire divine man, because we know that the Sphirot in the shape of a human, so spiritual dynamic of a human, and that is flooded with this inner light of Keter, which brings satisfaction and happiness and goodwill throughout all the Sphirot. Shenikra Eden, which is called Eden. Eden fills, everything is filled with Eden. And Eden is the garden of pleasure. And that's what the verse says. You should call for Shabbos oneg pleasure. So the pleasure is called, in other words, there is the essence of the pleasure that is at the essence. And calling it means allowing it to express itself, allowing it to move out. Like we said earlier. So since on Shabbos there is no judgments, so precisely at the mincha time, when usually there is the most judgment, on Shabbos there is the most flow of kindness. On the contrary, the mincha de Shabbos, at the prayer of the mincha of Shabbos, the will of all will is present. Now, even though the will of all wills is related to the innermost of the crown, which we would argue is already happening at least Shabbos day. Okay, Friday night not, because Friday night we're reaching the pleasure, but we're reaching only the pleasure of the project, like we said. We're reaching only the Keter of the world. We're not reaching the Keter of the Keter, the crown of crown. But Shabbos day is already reaching Atika Kadisha. It's already reaching the real crown of crown. If that's the case, so why mincha? Why is the afternoon meal greater than the second meal? The answer is, yeah, we have already the Atika stimulated, so to speak, awakened already by Shabbos morning. But in Shabbos morning, it's happening in a very inward space, meaning in God, it's secret, in the secret chambers of the infinite, of the Ein Sof, he's delighting, but he's not showing it to the world. And on Shlishis, the third meal, mincha time, is when it comes flooding out to the creation. And its main radiance below, mincha, is in the time of mincha, like we said earlier. The Alkane, and therefore us, then Atika Kadisha Galia, the ancient, the holy one, is revealed. Ratzin delay his desire. Piddish, what does that mean? The hidden delight and the hidden pleasure he's revealing. Ratzin delay, that is called his will. Which is the simple will. The crown of the crown. And therefore it's also referred to as Raiva Deraivan, the will of all wills, the pleasure of all pleasures. Excuse me, as stated elsewhere. And it is enough to those who understand. Now we go back to the Zohar. So the Zohar now continues. And in this moment, when this will was revealed, Moshe's soul, Moshe Rabbeinu, soul departed and passed away. We know there were three great tzaddikim, three greatest of the Jewish leaders who passed away by Shabbos, by Mincha. Shabbos, not just on Shabbos, but in the afternoon. Moshe, Yosef, and David. These are three tzaddikim, three of the great of the righteous people: Joseph, King David, and Moses. All soul departed in the world at that moment. Why? So he's not going to talk about the others. He's not going to talk about King David, and he's not going to talk about Joseph over here. But what he's talking about over here is why Moshe departed at this time. Because Moshe's soul cleaved to that inner essence that was revealed at that time. Because Moshe belongs there. That's what he's going to explain. Moshe's soul is a vessel. Soul of Moshe, it was primed to enter into such a state, to dissolve itself in God's will of will. So Moshe is almost like waiting for his moment where his soul needs to become subsumed in, needs to like be melt in. His soul has to melt into something. Moshe was waiting for the window to open up to that deep dimension of God, and it just sucked Moshe's soul right out of his body into Hashem, onto that level. That's why we know Moshe was not, his soul was taken by the angel of death. It was a kiss of God. Moshe, and in this will, Moshe passed away. In the will of Atik, Nafik Nishmase, his soul went out, Vistamer Bey, and he became hidden. He was hidden in, because this place, it reveals itself by Shabbos, by Mincha, but in essence, it's a place of the hidden of all hidden. It's the deepest, most hidden place, which is, besides the Mincha Shabbos, it's always locked and closed. It's the fact that it's revealed then is not because it's possible to be revealed. It's because at that moment, something impossible happens that reveals itself. It's not like, oh yeah, it happens every Shabbos. No, it shouldn't be revealed, but yet God reveals it. And Moshe's soul was able to like go into that hidden place. And that's why one of the first things the Torah tells us about Moshe after he passed away, no one knew where he is, where he's buried. Because his soul went into such a deep, godly, mysterious, hidden place, which is utterly unknowable, it affected his physical body as well, that where his body was interned, which means his gravesite, was not to be found. Wherever you looked for him, you thought he was somewhere else. It says, he's going to bring it soon, that the people, they knew that he was buried on Mount Nebo. It says in the Torah, go up Mount Nebo, But so why couldn't they find his gravesite? It says when they would go on top of the mountain, the people that would run up to the top imagined his gravesite being below. The people who went below imagined his gravesite being on top. So you couldn't like pick where Moshe or where his neshama was. It's like by the Rebbe. You go to the people in the Ohel, they tell you the Rebbe's at the Ohel. You go to the people in 770, they tell you the Rebbe's at 770. You know, like he's he's here, he's there. No, he's there, he's there. It's like these big tzaddikim. By the way, there's a great student of the Baal Shem Tov. His name is Reb Michal of Zlotchev, the holy Reb Michal of Zlotchev. He passed away by Shabbos by Mincha. And the way he passed away, it's a known story. He was pacing back and forth, reciting the Zohar, literally this passage about he Ratzon and that will the Stalik Moshe. Moshe passed away, and he was going back and forth, and suddenly his soul just left his body. So, like these, great tzaddikim who have some spark of Moshe inside of them can ascend at that moment. So it says, "B'ratzen da'atika." In the will of this Atik Yomin, Nafik Nishmasa, his soul went out v'stamerbed, he got concealed in it. Begin kach, and because of this, the Zohar says, "V'lo yada ishes kvarase." No one knew where Moshe is buried. Ksiv. Why? Because Ma Atika, just like the ancient one, is called Tamida, the Mikol Tamida, and is called the hidden of all hidden. The upper worlds don't know him. The hidden of all hidden are not known even from the upper worlds. And obviously then it's not known to the lower worlds. Even the most highest celestial beings, this level is mysterious, is hidden from them. That's why it's called the hidden. It's hidden from the hidden. And therefore as well, Hai Nishmasa, this soul, whose soul? Moshe's soul, the Itmar Bahai Ratzon that was interned spiritually in that will, it melted into the will. Tamir Mikol Tamirim is hidden from all hidden. Ish, and no man can know Moshe. Can't know where he is. You can't get to him. Cool. Piddish now explains the passage of the Zohar. Now the Alter Rebbe is going to explain a little bit and flesh this out. Why is Moshe related to this level more than anybody else? So he explains Piddish Moshe because the meaning of Moshe, Ubchinas Yesod Abba, Moshe's soul comes from Chachma. That's why Moshe was the one who gave us the Torah, because the Torah comes from Chachma. Chachma is wisdom. And Moshe is the person who brings the wisdom of God to the world, because his soul was come from Chachma. It says when he was born, Minamayim Mishisuhu. She called him Moshe. Why'd she call him Moshe? The daughter of Pharaoh. Why'd she call him Moshe? Because she plucked him out from the water. She found him in the Nile River. His mother placed him in the Nile. The daughter of Pharaoh, went and took him out from there. She called him Moshe. She said, I pulled him from the water. But that has a deeper meaning. Water is Chachma. His neshama, most of our souls are coming from Malchut, which is the lowest of the Sefirot. Moshe's neshama comes from the highest of the Sefirot. Comes from Chachma. And that's also the reason why the energy of Chachma is total nullification to God. Chachma has no self. That's why Chachma is called Koach. If you take the word Chachma and you divide it in two words, it's Chachma, Koach Ma, the power of what? The power of what, meaning being what? Of ultimate humility. Moshe says about himself, V'anachnu, about him and his brother Aaron, V'anachnu ma, we are what? We are egoless, utterly egoless in front of God. Because his soul comes from Chachma. Now, there are other tzaddikim that come from Chachma. What makes Moshe unique is there are other righteous souls that come from Chachma. What makes Moshe unique is that Moshe was able to transmit Chachma. He's the teacher of Chachma. He's the conveyor of Chachma. Therefore, his neshama comes from Yesod of Chachma. Yesod means the transmitting element of every sphera is the Yesod element of it. Yesod means to bond, the ability to bond and to connect. Moshe is able to connect Chachma to bestow, to channel the Chachma into every person that he came into contact with. And that's why Moshe didn't only know the Torah, he transmitted the Torah. Because he's the Yesod element of Chachma. That's what he says. Moshe is the now Chachma is called father. As we know, Chachma and Bina is called father and mother. So that's what he refers to over here. Yesod Abba is the Yod element of. That was when he was alive. Meaning, in his physical body, his soul, that was a seed that was taken. The source of his soul was taken from the supernal Chachma and the Yesod element of the Chachma, which was manifesting in his body while he was alive. But when he passed away, his soul ascended even higher than where he was. And when he passed away, Zacha, he merited l'shara chamishim, he merited to the 50th portal, shemachaber chachma ubina, that connects chachma and bina. We know that in bina there are 50 gates, and the 50 gates of bina, 50 gates of understanding. So we know the 49 gates of understanding are reachable. Moshe attained the 49 gates of understanding. To him was revealed every level of understanding. He had ultimate understanding. But the 50th gate was elusive. His entire life, he did not attain the 50th. There's a verse that says, Vatachsirehu, Hashem made him lack ma'at me'elokim, a little tiny bit from being divine. The little bit is referring to Moshe. Moshe was, Hashem reduced from him just a tiny bit because he had all 49. It's referring to the 50th gate of Bina. Bina is a lot of time called Elokim. Chachma is Havaya. Bina is Elokim. So ma'at me'elokim means a tiny fragment of Elokim was lacking all his life. But that 1/50th of the name of Elokim is infinitely bigger and greater than all the 49. Because the 50th portal of Bina is really the light of Keter that shines in Bina. So Keter is Ein Sof. Keter is the infinite. Bina is already a fixed light that has vessels, containers. So the 49 gates of Bina have some kind of a measure, some kind of a container. The 50th gate it's referred to, it's called Ayin, complete nothingness. It's even higher than Chachma. It's Keser. The 50th gate of Bina connects Chachma and Bina and unifies them as one. Because it's higher than Chachma and it's higher than Bina. Now, when Moshe passed away, his soul ascended into the 50th gate. Where do we see that? He was told, by the time of his passing, God said, go up the mountain and you will pass away. Which mountain did he tell him to go? The Torah refers to that mountain as Mount Nebo, which in Hebrew is called Nevo. Nevo, the Ari, reveals the secret, the great, that Nevo stands for Nun Bo, the 50th is in it. So the physical going on that mountain was a reflection of a spiritual ascent of his soul into the 50th gate. Like it's explained elsewhere. V'hainu, what does that mean? She'Allah, he rose l'pchenas pnimius da'or Abba, to the innermost of the light of Chachma. See, the 50th gate of Bina, we said a moment ago, is really above Bina. It's not part of the properties of Bina. And it connects Chachma and Bina. So what does that mean? It's a light that it's the soul of Chachma and the soul of Bina. It's the light, it's the pure, divine, infinite light that shines into Chachma and into Bina, but it always remains elusive from Chachma and Bina. It's like hovering. Even Chachma does not grasp the and that's why it's called Pnimius. It's the inner light. It's Pnimius Abba. It's the inner light of Chachma. because we learned many times that the innermost of Chachma is the level of Keter, not just Keter, but there's a phrase in Chassidus and Kabbalah called Pnimius Abba, the inner soul of Abba, which is Father, which is Chachma, is Pnimius Atik. It is the same level as the innermost of the crown. That means the innermost of the crown radiates into the deepest innermost point of Chachma. Now Moshe, his level is Chachma, but his level was during his lifetime on the more outer. His soul was kind of conscious of the outer element of Chachma, not at the deepest inner point of Chachma. But when he passed away, God unlocked for him the depth, the inner depth of his own neshama. So that's why his soul, which till now he wasn't conscious of. In other words, he's explaining why Moshe has a relationship to the light of Mincha of Shabbos, which is really the light of the crown of Atika Kaddish, which is reflected in the 50th gate. The 50th gate of Bina is is where this light of Atika of Atik Yom and of the Ancient of Days shines, the light of Keter. Why does Moshe have a connection? Because Moshe is the level of Chachma. But during his lifetime, he was more experiencing the outer element of Chachma. More like the body of Chachma, but not the soul of Chachma. Or even if he was experiencing the soul of Chachma, he wasn't experiencing the soul of Chachma. And when he passed away, this is where he opened up. This is where his soul went. He ascended to the innermost of the light of Chachma, Shumadrega Achas, which is one level, the same level, Imchenes Pnimius Atik Yom, which is the same level as the Pnimius, the innermost of Atik Yomin, which is what's revealed by Shabbos by Mincha, as we say, because we're the Keter of Keter, the crown of crown, is revealed in Chachma and via Chachma through the Spheros. That was a moment where Moshe can like be like a little fish that you let it back into the water. Like it says in Eitz Chaim. And he was plucked from the water, and then he then returned to the water where he was plucked from. And then once, it's like imagine taking a fish that you have, and then you fished in your fish tank for many years, and you developed a good relationship with it, and then you take it to the ocean, you put it, you'll never see it again. You allow it to go into the hidden ocean. As stated in Eitz Chaim, Shepnimius Abba, the innermost of Chachma, hu la'olam pnimius Atik Yomin, is always the innermost of Atik Yomin, of Ancient of Days. P'chinas ha'pnimius Atik Yomin, and the inner element of Atik Yomin, hainu p'chinas ha'oneg, this is this level of divine pleasure, ratzon ha'pashat, that the simple will, when we call it a simple will, means it's not a will for something. It's not a fulfillment of something. I want a house. I want a new car. I want to find love. I want to find this. That's already particular. This is the will and the pleasure of all pleasure is the essence of the essence. That's why it's called simple, because it doesn't have any design yet. Shemeir, that is illuminating ma'atzmus ataynig apashut, from the very essence of the simple pleasure. V'nikra ratzon da'atika, it's called the will of Atika, of the Ancient One. The shaman over there and on that level, also nishmas Moshe b'Moisai, Moshe's neshama went up when he passed away. Ubegin kach, and for that reason, no one knew his burial site. Le'elyonim nidmalam lamata, as it says in the Gemara, that the upper ones thought that Moshe is in the bottom of the mountain. Uletachtonim, and the ones who are at the bottom of the mountain, nidmam lamayla, they thought he's on the top of the mountain. This is also Masha Amar Khan, what it says over here. Ba'atika, in the Ancient One, b'ratzon delay, in his will, shahu tamir mikol tamir, and that is hidden from all hiddenness. V'lo yadin, and the Zohar says high level that no one knows it. Why was Moshe so hidden? because he went into the hiddenness of hiddenness, which is the innermost of Keter, which is the hidden. And when it says V'layadin continues, they don't know him. Ilan, the upper worlds, V'tatan, the lower ones. What does that mean? Shel yoinem nidbalam lamata, the upper one story is below. What does that mean? So Gevalt. Ki b'chinas atzmus or ein sof, because the essence of the ein sof, meir be'ilan v'tatan, illuminates and shines in the upper and in the lower worlds equally. Bashva achas in an equal state. What does that mean? Piddish, he's going to explain. Ilayin, when we say the upper, we mean upper over here means the energies of God that are sovev, that are encompassing, which means God's energies that surround the vessels, that surround the cosmos, that surround the world, that surround the surrounding energy. That's called upper. The reason it's upper, because it's above our grasp. If it's higher than a vessel, which means it can't be contained. And the lower means the light that goes into vessels, the orpnimi, the internal light. That's called lower because it could be contained in a vessel. So we might say like this: the light of the 10 Sefirot, the Or Eloki, the godly light that goes into Chachma, Bina, Chesed, Gevura, into every Sefirah, the light that goes into the that's orpnimi, that's internal light. That's called the lower. The Keter, the crown, that's called the higher. Because Keser is a level of infinity. It's such a high, God has not modified that light to any vessel. So it's still in an undefined infinite state. So it's called upper. But when we're talking about over here, what happens by Shabbos, by Mincha, is a light that is equally elusive to the internal levels of the divine that are in vessels, and it's equally eluding the transcendental lights that surround the worlds. It's equally far from Keser as it is from the 10 Sefirot. Why? Because the whole difference that there is in the upper and from the lower is, I'm going to say it in very simple terms. Once God is illuminating a light that he allocates for creation, once Hashem is sending an energy, an infusion to illuminate the worlds, in that light are two levels. First, that light is unrestrained and it's still kind of shining in all of its expansion. And then that light gets condensed and it gets kind of that energy flow, and that light gets modified and constricted to adapt to each level. But even the higher light is already a light that he's allocating to existence. In Kabbalistic terminology, especially for those who follow the Elokus podcast, it's the light coming from the Kav. What's the Kav? In Kabbalah, it says like this: the Or Ein Sof, the infinite light, was in the beginning. God's infinite light was shining everywhere. There was no possibility for anything to exist. Then Hashem went and carved out a black hole, which means he removes his revealed presence from a space. Over here, again, this is higher than time and space, so this needs to understand what it means. But he kind of imagined it like creating this black hole, this empty space, this void, this nothing there, just emptiness. And into that, okay, that's the space for the worlds to exist. Then he reprojects himself into that empty, dark space through a beam of light that is from the light that was shining beforehand. And that's kind of coming from above the circle. The black hole is a circle. So from above the black hole, where the inner is still shining, or it was never blocked, he breaks into, he cracks open that black void, and a direct light enters, and from that light, all of existence is produced. But here as follows: the way it works is that each time that beam of light is merging, what it does is first produces a circle, It releases light as a circle, and that becomes the keter for the next world, the crown, an encompassing light. And then from the crown that has just been produced, it then produces 10 lights and creates sephirot in that world. Then this kav continues further and produces another circle. And each circle inside the other circle is a lesser light. But all these circles are considered keter. They're all sovev, encompassing lights. They're like in an onion, one surrounding the other, one circle, one inside the other. All these circles are all encompassing lights because they're circular, which means they're above vessels. And in between each circle comes a more condensed light that goes inside vessels and becomes an internal graspable light. However, and over there is a difference between the upper and the lower. The upper is the level of the circular lights that are not limited to vessels. And the lower is the levels where there is already the light is contained in a vessel, which is already considered lower because it's limited. But think about it. All this whole thing is relative only where? As long as we're talking what the kav produced, what that line produced. In that line, in other words, what God is allocating for creation, which He's shining for the world, over there is transcendental light and there is more invested light, higher lights. But what happens when the light that's surrounding the circle, that's surrounding the void, the original light, that light is everywhere. When we say there's a void, it means it's just not, God doesn't allow it to be felt. So it's hidden behind. So it's everywhere. That light is like present in the circle as well, but no one is aware of it. Who's not aware of it? All these onion circles and everything, the entire cosmic order is unaware of it because they're not feeding off it. It remains completely obscure above. It's God's private domain. It's like God can be living exactly doing His thing, playing poker exactly where you're doing your thing. God can do whatever. In other words, His presence can be exactly where you are, and then you're oblivious. But not only you, all spiritual, celestial worlds are oblivious to God's true self. And He's present everywhere because there's no place that's void of Him. Now imagine if that light, that encompassing, surrounding light, suddenly comes out of the shadows and emerges. It will be equally stunning to the small vessels with the small, and to the encompassing surrounding lights. The Or HaSovev, the encompassing light, the Keter of every world, and the Spirit of every world are equally far from this and equally not ready for this light, and it's equally blow their socks off of the lights of all these things because He's transcending both equally, because this is not a light that's meant for anybody. It's God just opening up and being Himself, but not hiding it, just allowing Himself to be as He is in the world. It's not about the world, it's about Him. That's what happens by Shabbos, by Mincha. And when else this was revealed? This is like by the splitting of the sea. That's the same mimer, the Mashiach mimer that we're learning about why there's no eating on Shvishal Pesach. That whole thing. This is this idea. It's the light that's higher than the kav. So therefore, Sovev, and it's equal. So here's the thing: when it's hidden, when God is not splashing around, making noise from His hidden place in the background, when He's not, intentionally revealing Himself then it's equally hidden from everybody. You can't say He's more hidden from the physical than He is from the spiritual. No, He's equally hidden. He can be as high, no one knows Him. Not even the highest divine levels don't know that level. And it's equally removed. It's utterly unknowable. And when he's revealing, it can be everywhere. It's everywhere the same. It hits all the worlds equally. This is so that's the concept of what we say. That's the meaning of the hidden from all hidden. And Moshe's neshama was introduced into that light. And that's why once Moshe's soul was entered into that oneness with God, into that experience. To God as he's beyond the entire ray of light that feeds the creation. Beyond that all, to the essence of the Or Ein Sof. And that's where you can understand why you can't find it. Because that's hidden, it's hidden from all hiddens. And that's the meaning the upper ones say he's lower, the lower say he's upper, because he's elusive, because the upper meaning the surrounding lights, the keter of each world. It has no clue. Maybe it's lower. And the lower ones think maybe it's higher. It's just not to be found. The makif, which is called hidden and hidden. But he himself, Tamar, is hidden, even from that which is hidden. Tamar, equally, the way he is hidden, Tamir, just like he's hidden, from the internal lights. Achas, with one equal hiddenness. Achar, since because he himself fills the entire space. The very black hole that God created, where he removed himself, it needs to be understood that he didn't remove himself. He only pulled out from being from him being sensed in this space. So it's not being sensed. The tzimtzum arishon, and even the first tzimtzum, gamkein ein amas telefanav, also doesn't hide for him. That's what we mean. Even in the black hole, it never blocked him. He's there. Alkein, and therefore, ilam v'tatan lo yadin b'shva achas. The upper and the lower are equally ignorant in front of this light. And it works in one or two ways. Either he reveals himself and illuminates in both levels, which means in the Keser and in the lower Sefirot. And when he does, he's equally present in both. When he's revealed. When he is concealed, he's equally hidden from both. Heaven and earth I fill. So it doesn't say a difference of heaven and earth. God fills them both equally. Heaven also means the encompassing lights. They're called heaven. Like the heaven is circular around the earth. Earth is referring to on all levels, the internal light. And Hashem is equally hidden from both. And since it is so, Gam Nishmas Moshe, also Moshe's Neshama, Sha'Allah b'pchenes pnimius Abba, also Moshe's Neshama that rose up into the innermost of Abba, into the innermost of Father. Sha'Oila b'pnimius Atik Yoimin. Remember, Moshe, what happened on when he passed away? His soul is always from Chachma. What happened is when Shabbos came, when the time of his passing, he was invited into the innermost of Chachma. He said earlier, the innermost of Chachma is where the inner light of Keter shines, and the inner light of Keter really means the light that's before the Tzimtzum. That's really, really what it means, the inner light of Keter. Pnimius Atik Yomin is the Or Ein Sof that's before the Tzimtzum. And that's what we said happens on Shabbos day. That's the difference between Friday night and Shabbos day. Because Friday night, the internal light goes up into the encompassing light. But it's the encompassing light that's part of the creation, part of the system of worlds. It's part of it's what we say. It's not the crown of the crown. It's the crown. It's the crown. It's the surrounding energy from that particular world. It's the Keser of Atzilus. But then there is the Keser of all Kesers, the Keser of the Orein Self that's around. That's what happens. That's what's revealed on Shabbos. And that's called hidden of all hiddens. And that it rises in the innermost of Atik Yom and B'Shabbos b'Mincha Dafka, especially by Shabbos by Mincha, K'nis Kaliyal, as we said earlier. Amar boy, that's why it says by Moshe, Yada Ish, no one knew where he was buried. Shanela min al yoinim, he was hidden from the upper, Va'atachton, and the lower. Ula and to the ones on top, Nidmalam Shulamata. It appeared to them that he is below. Is explained elsewhere. Now the Zohar continues. Tachazi, come and see. We learned in last class number 6, that since the light of Keser, the lights of the crown, illuminate, and remember we illuminate into Chachma. That means this 10 Sefirot become illuminated with the light of the crown. We learned the Torah too gets crowned. So I was saying in last class we were learning the Torah itself, the very same verses of the Torah become infinitely richer and infinitely more deeper on the light of the Torah becomes infinitely richer and infinitely more potent on Shabbos. You're not reading the same Torah on Shabbos. Of course, it's the same. But the flow of meaning, of divine depth, it exponentially grows. That's on Shabbos, if one is studies, you can have much greater insights on Shabbos because there's a tremendous expansion in Chachma. The Torah gets crowned. And as we learned in last class, it's called perfect crowns. Remember we learned this, imperfect crowns, perfect crowns. Perfect crowns means that the crown of crown in each level, the 3 first, the crown of crown, as we discussed, of each level is Nizgala, reveals itself in the Torah. So now the Zohar continues on that. Tachazi come see. Remember we discussed that's why in many shuls, when they take out the Torah on Shabbos, they put on the crown. Which during the weekday, you can take out the Torah to read and you won't put on the crown. Because on the Shabbos, the Torah has a crown. The Torah that becomes crowned on this day, Misatra Bekula, becomes crowned in all of its levels. What does that mean? That don't think that it's only the most sublime pinnacle of Torah that becomes crowned with this infinite, unimaginable light of God. But no, it permeates the Torah completely. In other words, it illuminates into the highest peak of Torah, but Torah is also an entire configuration. Because, for example, there is the essence of the Torah, which is, I am God, your God. You shall not be any gods other than me. That's like the essence. That's the nucleus. From there come the rest of the 10 commandments. And from there come the 613 commandments. 248 positive commandments, 365 prohibited commandments. And then after that comes all the interpretation and all the rabbinic ordinances and all, which are all offshoots. So what he's saying is when we say on Shabbos, the Torah becomes infused with this infinite pleasure and delight, it fills the entire Torah all the way to the outer. The tiny twigs of the Torah are filled with that light of pleasure. Not only the trunk of the Torah, he's going to refer to the Torah as a tree. Not only the trunk of the Torah or the root of the Torah is exponentially enriched, but it enriches the tree trunk. It enriches all the branches, the tree of life, all the way down to the smaller branches, all the way to the tiny twigs, all the way to the tiny little leaves. It's saturated with this light of infinite pleasure and delight that infuses the Torah. That's the next piece. Tochazi come and see a raisa, the Misatra B'Hayoyma, the Torah that becomes crowned on this day. Misatra B'Kula becomes crowned in all of its dimensions. B'chol in Pikudin, in all the commandments, these are the positive commandments. B'chol in Gezerin, in all the decrees, v'anchin and punishments, which he's going to explain in a moment, is referring to prohibitive commandments. B'shivin Amfin, in its 70 branches, because the Torah, although there's 613 commandments, it's really 70. Because the Torah then, the root of the Torah are the 7 divine emotions. And 7, every number is perfect with 10, so it becomes 70 emotions. And those 70 emotions are the root of all the mitzvot. It's considered to have 70 branches. But all these 70 branches are on Shabbos, flowing with the light of the innermost of the crown. It's juiced up with an energy that is just Ein Sof. B'shivin Amfin, in the 70 branches, Dinahoira de Zaharin, of this light that is shining, B'chol Sitra v'Sitra, in every side of the Torah, every angle of the Torah, every offshoot of the Torah is illuminated with this incredible light of pleasure, or this incredible delight. Man chami, who can see anfin de nafkin, the branches that go out, mikol anfa de anfa, from every branch there's branches, and all of that is all illuminated with that light. Chamisha kaimen begoyilana, there are 5 that are present in the tree. Kuli anfin baha achidan, and all the branches are unified with those 5. Now, this is going to take us back to what we learned in last class, that there's a concept called the 5 chasadim, the 5 kindnesses. So in addition to the 70 branches, which are the main branches of the tree, which are the offshoots from there, there's also a certain element of 5 powers of kindness. That is the water element that's in the tree. Kindness is water. Every tree can only grow with a moisture. And that's the water that flows through the divine tree. So in the Torah as well, there's a certain divine watering. And that is present, just like when a tree is growing, there's all the different sides of the tree and all the branch, but the water reaches everywhere. So too, these 5 chasadim reach everywhere. And in these 5 chasadim flow this pleasure that we discussed. It's almost like the 5 powers of chesed, which are really 50, as we're going to see, because each 5 has all the other 5, and then times 10, as we discussed, how you get 50. These 5 are all incorporate 10. And what happens then is that these 50, they are they saturate the entire tree. Like the water in the tree is everywhere, the moisture of the tree. So let's see how this Piddish, as he explains, the root of this is not the Torah, by the way. The main Torah, the main Chumash, the main scripture, 5 books of Moses, he's going to explain in a moment, is the 6 emotions of God. And mainly Tiferet. The Torah is Tiferet, which is the 3rd emotion, which is the Torah itself. There's the Erampin. But the root of the Torah is Chachma. Chachma, Torah, Araisa, Chachma, Nafkis, as emerges from Chachma. So the beginning, Pedish, Araisu, B'chenes Chachma, Datzilas. Araisa, the Torah itself, is the Chachma element. That's the root of the Torah, is the Chachma of Atzilus. But on that level, on the level of Chachma, you don't have any design yet. Chachma is still such a pure abstract point. There's no design. The limbs of the Torah, the mitzvot of the Torah, and so is when the Torah starts to becoming developed, that's already in the emotions. Now, but what's the recipient? Where can the light of Keter, which is pure infinite light, what's the only vessel that can receive the light of Keter? There's an air in the emotions, because they are already designed with a certain design, with a certain fixture, and they don't have the complete bittul, the epitome of total nullification. They have some kind of a substance of self. The light of Kesser can't reside in them. The only one that can receive this infinity, the pure light, especially since we're explaining now that this light of Kesser is the light that's before the Tzimtzum, you have to be utterly nullified, utterly nothing. You have to be, if you have any definition that defines and limits you, there's nothing to talk about. So Chachma is the Chachma is the only one who can receive. That's the meaning. The Torah and its root, which is total bittul and nullification. Chachma koyachma. That's where the light of Kesser, the light of Shabbos, can shine. But via the Chachma, once it's received in Chachma, Chachma now spreads into all the Sefirot, all the attributes, into all the particular mitzvot of the Torah, to infuse it with Chachma, but not just with Chachma, but with the light of Kesser on Shabbos that fills the entire Torah. So again, the Torah is the Chachma Vatzilus Shemakabela Saras HaKesser. Chachma is what receives the light of Kesser Kedis Kliyal. I know Piddush, and that's the meaning, the Misatra, that the Torah becomes crowned. The Amar, and then he says, that the light of Keter that shines in Chachma, Hushem Mispashit, this is what expands B'chol ha'oiros, in all the lights. There's an Eranpin of the small face, which remember we learned, that's the 6 emotions of God, are called the Eranpin. Ki b'chachma mislabeshes tchila ha'ara. First, the light needs to land. It needs to first expand in Chachma. Chachma is the only keli, the only vessel that could receive such powerful light. Ki eines lapshes ha'aras ein sof, because there is no radiance of the ein sof, shebebchines ha'kesa, that's from the level of Keter or the crown. Kiim, only ayidei ha'chachma b'tchila. Only through Chachma first. Dafka. Ki yidu, as it is known. But afterwards, mishpashet ha'aras ha'keser, then the luminance of Keser expands gam ba'oire shemekablim in ha'chachma, also into the lower levels that receive from Chachma. V'hainu, and that means, how does it get into the 6 emotions? Well, how does consciousness evolve into the emotions? First you have Chachma. Then Chachma feeds Bina. Bina is already understanding. Once Bina is understanding and understands the subject thoroughly and details it and compartmentalizes it, and all of this gives so much more definition and character to this undivided. From there starts brewing the emotions. So Bina is the source of the emotion. She's called mother of the children. And particularly, Bina itself is an entire configuration. Her first 3 sefirot are intellectual. That's that's understanding for the sake of understanding. There's no emotional component to it. But then in the Bina itself is like a mother who she becomes pregnant with children already. She's already pregnant with her. And that's Bina as she's moving towards the emotions. That's called the Zayin Tata and the Bina, the 7 lower attributes of Bina. That's where the 70 start. That's where it becomes 7. That's where the number 7 comes out. In Chachma, you're not feeling any 7. Chachma is just one singular point. In Bina, where everything is far more defined, so over there already you can sense the 7 lower of Bina, which the 7 lower of Bina, remember every number is completed by 10. So the 7 is the 70, which then becomes the power and the source for the 7 emotions. So the light of Keser that is flowing in Chachma on Shabbos, the Zohar is saying, is flowing into the 70 branches, which he's translating over here means the 70 branches, B'china Zayin Tatan the Bina, the 7 lower aspects of Bina, Shemispashtim, that later expand B'zaya Midas Teza, into the 7 emotions of the Ze'er Anpin. Remember, the Ze'er Anpin is the emotional level, which they are feeding from the intellectual level. For example, I'll give you an example. In emotions, we know there are 49 gates. 49 elements of the emotions, because it's 7 times 7, Sfirat Omer. We correct our emotions. Chesed Shebechesed, each day another nuance of our emotion. But we also know that there are 49 gates of wisdom. So the number 49 repeats itself twice. Once in the emotional strata of the person, and also in a more abstract way in the intellect. There is 49 gates, like we discussed earlier. 7 times 7, 98. V'nikra, and they are called ayin anfin. They are called the 70 branches. Just like a tree, gives the example of a tree. A tree has a ikar. The ikar of the tree is the tree trunk. The shoresh, but even deeper than the trunk, are the roots. The yesh anofim, and then there are branches, hamispashtim, that expand from the tree. Now, when we speak about the divine tree of chachma, is called shoresh ha'ilan. Chachma is called the root of the tree. And what's the tree itself? The tree is the ze'er anpin. The ze'er anpin is called the tree, and the chachma is the root of the tree. Like it says, Kia Adam, Eitz Hasada, man is compared to a tree of the field. So which man is this referring to? The human. There are many similarities between a human and a tree. I'm not going to go into it right now. There's many similarities between a human and a tree. But it also refers to the divine tree. The divine man. The Sfirot are particularly the 7 emotions are called the human, are called Adam, above. For example, when the prophet sees there's a throne, and on the throne he sees a man sitting on the throne, the image of that is the structure of the divine emotions. It's called Adam. And that Adam is called the tree. So just like a physical tree has roots beneath it, what is the roots of the tree of the divine emotions is the chachma that feeds the tree. This tree is not a regular tree. This is called the tree of life. Torah, that's the Torah. The Torah is a eranpin. Like it says by her, that the Torah is referred to Eitz Chayimish, is a tree of life. Va'ayin anfin, and the 70 branches, Sheba, Hainu hakloliyos kol hamitzvos. The generality of the mitzvot, even though we said there's altogether 613 commandments, but really there is 70. And many mitzvot are like offshoots of one mitzvah. Ramach mitzvahs asay, so the 248 positive commandments, nikra pekud. Remember, the Zohar said that it fills every element. It fills the pekudin of the Torah, which means commandments, and also it fills the gzerin va'unshin, the decrees and the punishments. What does that mean? That's referring to the 348 prohibitions, 2 types of mitzvahs. The mach mitzvahs say nikra pekudin. The positive 248 positive commands are called pekudin. V'shasal loisa say, and the 365 prohibitions nikra gzerin va'unshin are called decrees and punishments, kidu, as it is known. Mitzvahs asay, and the positive commandments, sharsham ebchenas hey chasadim. The positive commandments are rooted in the 5 chasadim. The positive commandments are rooted in the 5 powers of chesed. V'haloisa say, and the prohibitive commandments, sharsham ebchenas hey gavuras. They're rooted on the 5 powers of gavura. Because what does it mean, the 5 powers? Because we know that there is chesed in each sphere. Chesed of, right? But there's also gevura in each sphere. There's the gevura, the 2 main spherot is chesed and gevura. So they're in each one. The hakol nimshach, and all these are drawn mezayin tatan the bina. And once they settle in and they become manifest as emotions, they're emotions. But what's their source? Where do they begin evolving as separate powers? In the bina, in the understanding. Even though in a seed they're all in chachma, just like the roots of the tree contain the whole tree. But in chachma you can't see it. Chachma is like a seminal drop. that has the entire child, but it's all one drop. In the mother, the limbs become differentiated. So in Bina, you can already start dissecting a child. But then when the child is born, that's the emotions, that's a full-fledged child. So it divides into 70 branches. And this is what it says, that the Torah becomes crowned in all of it. What does that mean? That the simple desire of God, mischalik, flows into, it fills the entire tree. That means the Shabbos, the refreshed Shabbos energy, the deeper godliness that flows into the entire Sefirot is such a powerful that it reaches the tiny alleyways also. It fills, it runs through the entire tree all the way to the tiny twigs. It goes through everything. It goes into the 70 branches. And afterwards, it saturates the 613. Because what's the difference between the 70 and the 613? 70 are the root of the 613. 7 emotions. And then the emotions become nuanced. Just like every emotion of a person. There is the general emotion of love. And then there is, I love my friends. I love my family. I love this. I love that. That's already details. So that's the difference between the 70. 70 is the primary power of the mitzvot. And then there is, from the 70 primary mitzvahs, come out the specifics, and ultimately it results in 613 commandments. And in all of them, yesh oir hakeser ameir b'Shabbos. In all of them is the light of Keter that shines throughout all of them in Shabbos. That's why we're going to see in the end of the discourse that if you keep Shabbos well, according to halacha, you're very careful with Shabbos, it's as if you kept all the mitzvahs, and all the blemishes that someone had in any mitzvah becomes filled in that one Shabbos that you keep. Keep Shabbos, it's like, why? Because Shabbos is the inner light of Keter, and that is much more powerful than the individual mitzvah. And when that swoops into the mitzvahs, it patches up any lacking. It regrows if there's any tooth that has been a little chipped that didn't grow, if there's any dead cells of the divine man, so to speak, which translate into a person's connection to God and so on. If anything died in the person's soul, and Shabbos can like resurrect it, Shabbos can like repair it. It does a self-repair and everything, because the energy of Shabbos is so potent and so powerful and flows into all the mitzvahs. Everything becomes Shabbos-tic. That's the point. The Shabbos saturates from head to toe. The light of Keser, Ameir b'Shabbos, Mibchenes HaRatzon, from the will, Atayna Gapashat, and the simple pleasure. Hanis Kalial that we mentioned earlier, V'day Lamev. Masha Kosav, and this that it says the Nahar in Mekol Sitra v'Sitra, and this that the Zohar says that is shining in every direction. Hainu b'chol chelkei havav ktzavis tezah. It means in all the details of the 6 directions of the Ze'er Anpin, which is also the idea of the 70. 7 is if you count Malchus 2. 6 is if you count the primary Sefirot, which are the 6. But every element of that, Sitra v'Sitra, all the nuances of the emotions, which is the divine man, the divine limbs, are filled with this Shabbos light. And this is what it says. Who can look? Who can see? Anfin de nafkin mikol anfa. Who can see the branches that goes out from all the branches? Hainu prata yischalkus l'taryag. This is referring to further. In other words, first it goes into 70 branches. And who can then see how these 70 branches become small little twigs, which is referring to the 613. Shanis chalik, that became subdivided, may ayin anfin, from the 70 branches, Bina Leal, that was mentioned there, the Daila Maven, and there's enough to those who understand. The Chamisha Kaimin Goyelana are 5 that are standing in the tree. So this is already no more the structure of the tree. There's something about 5 that is present in the entire tree. What's that? Pidish, that's the moisture of the tree. And that is these are the 5 powers of chesed that come from Bina. Because Bina is the source of the emotions. So in Bina, we know there are 5 and 5, like the 5 fingers. 5 in the right hand, 5 in the left hand. 5 powers of chesed is the 5 in the right hand, 5 fingers in the left hand. So in the Bina, there are 5 powers. So the Upidish, so what's their job? They expand the tree, the Ze'eranpin of the Ze'eranpin. So he's going to explain what does that mean that they expand the tree. Upidish Hagdala Zois. What does it mean, this expansion? This is literally like the effect of water on a tree. A tree that's situated next to a water source or moist ground, these trees grow a lot. Because water makes a tree grow. A physical tree. Through this, the tree can grow. It can grow within itself. And also its bark. And it will grow. It will grow. If it's a fruit tree, it will be a very rich fruit tree with a whole lot of fruit. However, the water is not the fruit. The fruits, the leaves, the growth of the tree is intrinsic to the tree. A tree is a growing entity, and whatever that tree is, whether it's a pine tree, an oak tree, a lemon tree, an orange tree, the water is not contributing that. Water does not give the tree anything of its character. All water does is it allows the tree to activate itself. That's what it does. The tree is activating. The tree grows, but the water is that. Here's the thing. I'll put it in psychological words, perhaps. Water is love. When you show kindness and love to someone, you enable them to prosper. The children need a lot of love because they're growing. So when they have the love, of course, they need discipline as well. But the love always has to be there and kindness has to be there. Because when one feels a certain appreciation and a certain recognition and a certain, what does that do? That it helps you. It helps you grow. It gives you the water. It gives you that kindness. The kindness is. That's why the same water that makes an orange tree grow makes a lemon tree grow and makes an oak tree. All these trees, every tree is using the same water because the water is not producing anything; it's moisturizing and allowing the tree to. Because the growth of the fruits and the tree comes on its own. Why is it growing? It's through the water. The moisture of the water allows for the tree to grow. But when it's growing from within the tree. That's why each tree is growing according to its own nature of what that tree is. Definitely. You cannot say that the fruit grows from the water. It's growing from the tree. The water is the enhancer. The same will also be understood on a more psychological level in the emotions. In a human being, your emotions develop and your emotions grow. They grow, they expand. Ma'at. When you're a child, you have very, very small emotions. And when a person grows, there's a development in the emotions. From when a person is 2 years old, until you become 20, when you generally become an adult, you're emotionally developed. And the same also applies to the body. So how does the physical body grow? Also, it requires the moisture of water. Where do you have moisture of water? In the human body. Interesting. The moisture that we're talking about is produced, the moisture that we're talking about is produced is coming to the body in the blood. The blood has water inside of it. And the blood is what moisturizes the limbs and allows the growth to happen. The growing in the human being is from the water element. Now, blood is associated with Bina. The red element, because Bina is on the left side. Chachma is on the water itself is from Chachma. But its diffusion into the body is through the blood. And that's the meaning of the Hei Chasadim. How does Bina get Chesed? She picks it up from Chachma. Chachma gives the Chesed into Bina. But then Bina has the Hei Chasadim and expands it into the spheres. Which makes the limbs grow little by little. In the duration of this time. As it is known in the books of science. The Alter Rebbe is referencing the scientific books that were in his days. However, we cannot say you cannot say that the midos are born from the water. Your emotions are not created. Your essential emotions are not created by the water in your blood. Rather, the water only, as we spoke earlier in terms of a physical tree, the watery element over here allows for the expansion to happen. This yesod only causes the growth of the limb. When they grow on their own. Then on their own, it grows and it expands the emotions. The same like fruits grow on a tree, only after the tree became watered with water. A tree can be like parched and dry and almost dying, and then it gets a good shower and the tree wakes up. A good rain soaks the earth and the trees wake up and they start growing. Then is enough to those who understand. So it will be understood for those who understand above. In the supernal man of the world, the divine man of the world of Atzilus, of the world of emanation. Which are the 6 directions of the Ze'er Anpin, the 6 emotions. They grow in a broad way and an expansion from the expansion of the mochin, coming from the bina, as it is known. It's the 5 powers of chesed, of kindness, that flow from bina through the blood of bina. What kind of blood over here? Obviously, it's not physical, which flows throughout all the limbs of the 6 attributes of emotions of above, and it causes a great expansion in those attributes. For example, that God's kindness should become enormously great, that the kindness should flow in a much more expansive way to the world. It doesn't mean it doesn't mean that the 5 powers are what create the expansion of the emotions of Atzilus. They're the kindness that allows for, that creates the environment to the growth of these vessels of the emotions that are compared to limbs. And then then this growth of the lights of the Ze'er Anpin comes on its own, but they need water to create that. They need the kindness there to create that, to facilitate that growth. And that's why the Zohar says, Chamisha kaimen goy ilana. 5 of them are present in the tree. Goy ilana dafka. In the tree. The tree is a tree without the 5. The 5 is the moisture. And adam, in the man. The man over here is the supernal man. Just like in the physical human being, there is a moisture of water that's in the person's brain that goes into the blood of the limbs, and it helps them grow. And from this cause of water, kulu anfin baha achidin. All these branches are held onto it. Shakol zayin amida is the ze'er anpin. All the 7 emotions of the ze'er anpin. Hakludim kol echad miyud. That each one incorporates 10. That's why it's 70. That comes up to the number 70. All of the 70 grow from the 5. That's the point. So the 5 can really be considered 50, as we're going to see. So the 50 makes the 70 grow. So you got 50 and got 70. Can you do Avadai Lamev? Man chami inun tarin. So the Zohar continues. Now we're going to learn more, and then he's going to add more commentary. Oh, it's actually we're almost there. Man chami inun tarin de mitpatchen. Who can see? It seems like it's so interesting. It's like almost like the one who's saying the Zohar says, and can you see? Who can see that? Who can see how this is developing? Who can see? I don't see, but he's saying, who can see? Someone can see in and tar in the mispatchen. These doors opening up, b'chol star v'star in every direction. V'nahanen be'ahina hoyde loy pasak. Who can see the door swinging open and this great light that's flooding in, which is the light. The light is the light of Keter, which flows on Shabbos. And who can see the doorways opening up and allowing this light to flood everywhere throughout the entire supernal man. So what does that mean? Because these 5 powers of chesed are divided. So it's like what Shabbos does is it super enhances the 5 chasadim. Because really the real energy of growth of everything, the real power of it is this moisture. But there is the weekday water. And then there is the and that's a limited kindness. Because what's the water? The kindness. And then there's the kindness coming from the essence of God, which the kindness related to the essence of the infinite pleasure. On that level, the kindness is exponentially greater. So the water element that's flowing through is not just regular water. It's like super Fiji water. It's like from the deepest point to the spring. It's a different level of water. So it's a different level of expansivity and growth and so forth. And that's the meaning of that these 5 chasadim are divided into 50 gates. That's how you get the 50 gates. Each of them is divided, incorporates 10. First he was speaking, when he said 70, he was speaking about the 7 lower sefirot of Bina, which each one has 10, so it's 70. That's the difference between the 70 and the 50 is the 70 is the tree itself. That's the structure of the tree. It's based on 7 emotions. But then the expansion energy and the flow of life that flows in them, that's the 5 powers of chesed, which then is really 50. That's the gates that allow higher light and higher soul infusion to come into it. They're called the 70 branches of the tree that become enclosed in the Zeir Anpin. And now we're speaking about Benun Shari Bina, the 50 gates of Bina, Shemeirin B'chol Mida or Mida Shebizah, that illuminate in every emotion of the Zeir Anpin to bring them expansion. Masha Kasav, Lekal Setar Vistar in every direction. And this is what we say. The Shakasav, this is what we say. So Sha'arim Rashechem, gates open up. The gates should open up. We have to open up the great towers to open the gates. Pidish Hashanim Alalu. The gates have to open up. The great gates. In order to be the expansion, the gates have to open up. The gates have to open up. The gates have to open up to allow for the Hei Chasadim to come. The gates have to open up to allow for the 5 Chasadim to come. The gates, which are the 50 gates. The gates have to open up and allow for the 5 chasadim. Kidu, as it is known, I'm just doing spiritual work to get my building. The gates, the entrance way from where you go, where you enter, you enter the king's chamber, and through the gates, we're able to go out from the king's palace. You enter and you exit. Kach bebina, so too it is in bina shubchenes asaga, which is grasping. Niftach Pesach v'shar sheyecholen hakoil lahasig. Yeah, everybody can grasp. What does that mean? Trying to enter the divine. Where do you go? So to enter, you have to meditate. You have to learn something. You have to have some knowledge. So the Bina opens up gates through learning and studying and getting a mind expand. You open up. Now, eventually, the point over here is to move to a place that's beyond grasp and beyond understanding. Just to move into a place of deep experience that's higher than any grasp. But the entrance to get into that is through Bina. So there are 50 gates in Bina that enter up through the Bina. You can get to the light of Chachma, and in the light of Chachma flows the lights of Keser, which is where the king is emerging. The king over here is referring to the Or Ein Sof, the infinite. But it's through these gates. Everybody can go through this petach, this entrance way. To the inner light of Chachma, where Moshe enters. Which is called the chamber of the king. Shaboy Malubish, which inside over there is enclosed the Or Ein Sof, the light of the infinite. The Alkain, and therefore Kol Allah Asman. That's why whenever we are raising feminine waters, whenever we want to bring something to God, we want to bring Him some mitzvah. It's called raising of feminine waters. We're bringing a gift to Hashem. We're bringing something. It's nechnasim bebina. Everything goes up to Malchut. And then through Malchus, the Zeir Rampin, it's ultimately brought up into Bina, because Bina is the passageway into the chamber of the king. It's like entering the doorway of the palace. But it also works the other way. The masculine waters, which means God's reciprocation to channel His light to us, is also going through Bina. Like a entrance which has an entrance and an exit. Masculine waters exit through the 50 gates of Bina. Just say, why not Chachma? Because Chachma is too sublime to find it. I mean, only the biggest tzaddikim are able to enter into Chachma. He's going to say in a moment. Chachma is very elusive. Bina is an open path for everyone, because Bina is graspable. You can learn, you can study. Every person, according to what you understand, you might not understand the deepest. You can learn something simple in Torah, but Bina is available for everyone. Chachma, bittul, like deep, only the biggest tzaddikim are able to go. That's why he's going to say in a minute. By Chachma, it doesn't say that there are gates. By Chachma, it says 32 pathways. A pathway is a narrow trail. So only those extreme hikers who can climb Mount Everest, they can climb on that narrow trail and get there into Chachma, spiritual hikers. But the regular people, you need a paved road. They need a paved road. The paved roads are Bina. It's a gateway. You can't rise up. Chachma also has gates, entrances, but they're called shvilin. They're called narrow paths. The Lamed Beis Shvilin, the 32 paths, or Lamed Beis Nesivos, or 32 little trails. Shvilin are trails, and Nesivos are pathways. Just like a little path. It's not meant, the public doesn't go there. Only very, very a selected few. But the gate, that's open to everybody. I know. And that is because Chachma is a very, very hidden state. Chachma is ayin, is nothingness. It's hidden. It's beyond grasp. And that's why it says in these doorways that are open in every direction, and they become illuminated with the lights of Chachma through these gates of Bina, which are carrying the lights of Keser. Shemakabel, that receives. In other words, the Zohar is saying the direction of how it's all emanating into existence. It's coming through the gates of Bina that allow this, which is the 50 gates, which are the 5 chasadim, which allow for this expansion light of Bina to come down. And this light, it says, with a light that doesn't end, because only the light of Keser is called an endless light, because it's Ein Sof. Then a pasak, a light that doesn't end. So it's because it has a radiance of the Orient Sof, which means that even though you don't feel Shabbos the rest of the week, it can't. Every Shabbos you get can never be extinguished. It's there. It's just that we are not privy to experience our own Shabbos that's locked in our soul. Every Shabbos, it's new light comes in, and whatever we've absorbed is there forever. You absorb it in your cells, and it's a light that is a non-ending light. And therefore, the Zohar concludes, Koil Keruza Nafik, an announcement goes out in the upper worlds. Isar Kadishin Elyonim. Wake up, the holy ones. Wake up, come to the party. Wake up, don't be sleeping. Wake up. There's a call that calls out. Every Shabbos, there's an announcement that's meant. Wake up, the supernal holy ones. He explains, what does that mean? Who are the supernal holy ones? Those are the neshamas of the world of Atzilus. Pidish neshamas el yoinois ta Atzilus. These are the highest souls, the souls of Atzilus, of emanation. These are souls that have not yet entered into bodies. Not only didn't they enter into physical bodies, they didn't even enter into the more spiritual bodies of Bria, Yetzira, and Asiya. Bria, Yetzira, like the upper. For sure not down here, but they're very abstract souls. They're called the holy ones. They didn't come into bodies in Bria, Yetzira, and Asiya. And then there's another announcement. I'm sorry, it's not the other. It's the same announcement, but it says, wake up, you holy ones, supernal holy ones. And then it says, V'isaru, and wake up, Am Kadisha, holy nation. That's referring to the souls that are in bodies. Neshamis sheshoichnin, the souls that are yet dwelling, begufin, in bodies, whether a physical body or a spiritual body, but yet a body. Bibiyah, in the free world, Yetzir and Asir. Where should you wake up? Lekadmus marechem, to go greet your master. Lekadmus, to come greet your master. What does that mean? Lekabel, to receive Ziva Elyon, the supernal light, the Atzmas Orein Sof, of the essence of the Orein Sof. Shemis Ater Bekeser, that is crowned with Keter, Bahayoima, on this day, and that's why it's called, go greet your master. Isaru, wake up, the Zohar continues, Bechedvesa Shleimasa, wake up to the great joy, to the perfect joy. Is damnun betlas chedven detlas avon. Be present at the 3 joyous occasions of the 3 fathers, because this is manifesting in 3 meals. So make sure to be present at these meals. Is damnun lekadmus mehemnasa. Be present towards mehemnasa, the chedva, the chol chedvasa, to the faith of the joy of all joys. Pidish, as he explains, what does that mean? The dafka begimel madreges anal. It's precisely in these 3 levels, begimel asudais, in these 3 meals, in order to get the full package of the joy, from the essence of the simple pleasure, that's called the joy of all joys, the root of all pleasure, like we said earlier, so in other words, don't sleep through the entire Shabbos. Be awake, be present, be there. This is the joy that's flowing. Now we learn the last passage and the last bit of explanation. Omer Rabbi Yehuda. So Rabbi Yehuda says, Vadai ksiv. Definitely it says so. And Rabbi Yehuda brings 3 verses that he was inspired to say that, yeah, definitely it's so. That these 3 verses certify what was just said. It says, remember the day of Shabbos to make it holy. That's 1 verse. He's going to bring 3 verses that imply holiness. Remember the day of Shabbos, and holy means that which is removed, that which is above and hidden. So it says, remember the day of Shabbos to make it holy. Uksiv, it says, Kedoshim Tiyu, you be holy. Ki Kadosh Ani Hashem, because I am holy. That's in Leviticus and the opening of the report, Kedoshim. You be holy because I am holy. Uksiv, and it says, the third verse, the Kadas al Shabbos Oineg, you should call to Shabbos a pleasure. L'Kadosh Hashem, to the holiness, to the Holy One of God, Mechubad, who is honored. So again, L'Kadosh Hashem, to the Holy of God. He's going to explain soon in the piece. These three verses, each one is corresponding to another meal, as we'll see. Tana, we learned, B'ha Yoima, on this day, Kol Nishmasan de Tzadikaya Misadnin, all the souls of the righteous ones, Misadnin, become delighted, betafnuka, with delights, Ma'hu anuga da'atik yoimin, from that pleasure of the Ancient of Days. Steam the kol steam, in that which is hidden from all hidden. The ruche chada da'atik yoimin, and a wind, or a spirit, one spirit from the Ancient of Days, mispashta bekula alman, expands into all worlds, similar to the wind that was blowing the night of the splitting of the sea, like the ruach kadam. This great wind of atik yomins fills all of existence. The salka v'nachsa, it rises and it descends. It rises and it descends, up and down. Umispashta lekula b'nei kadoshim, and it expands to all the children of holiness. And then they can rest with a perfect resting. And all anger or all anxiety, all tension gets forgotten from them. In other words, if you allow Shabbos to really permeate you, it like de-stresses everything. There's no stress. There's no stress. And this is what it says, on the day that God has Hashem has exempted you from your sense, and from your wrath, from your anger. Because of this, Shabbos equals the entire Torah. V'chol the noter Shabbata, and anybody that keeps Shabbos, ke'ilu noter araisa kula, as if you kept the entire Torah. Dechsiv ashrei enosh yaseh zois. Fortunate is the person that does this. Shomer Shabbos mechalaloi. If you observe Shabbos from desecrating it, shomer yadoi, and you guard your hand ma'asois kol ra, from doing any negative. Ishtame demand noter Shabbos. So here it implies that anybody that keeps Shabbos, command noter araisa kula. It's as if you kept the entire Torah at kan. This is the end of the passage of the Zohar. And now he's going to give a little commentary on this last passage. So Pirish, what does it mean? Rabbi Yehuda mefarish legimel Seudas anal. Rabbi Yehuda explains these three meals. Begimel psukim alalu, in these three verses. Tchila b'Shabbos. He starts with the first verse, which is really implying, interesting, the second Shabbos meal. The first verse is the second Shabbos meal. I think the reason he starts with the second Shabbos meal is really because the essence of Shabbos is the second meal, the day meal, the meal of the day. That's the second Shabbos meal. Because that's the essence of Shabbos. That's the Atika Kadisha. That's the essence of the pleasure. Friday night is a little ray of this pleasure that's shining out, and Malchus is rising up to receive the ray of that pleasure. Shabbos by Mincha, the pleasure of Atika Kadisha projects outwards, but the essence is the Shabbos day meal. So Tchila b'Shabbos diyayim d'chsiv bei, it says by it, Zachar es yom HaShabbos, remember the day of Shabbos, Hazeh lekacha. I don't know where he has the word hazeh. It's interesting. It doesn't say hazeh. It says Zachar Siyam Shabbos lekacha. I don't know where the word hazeh comes. T'chsiv bei Zachar Siyam Shabbos hazeh lekacha, to make it holy. Upidish lekacha, the meaning to make it holy. Hainu lekacha, to make it holy. B'kedushas atzmus oirein sof, to make it holy with the holiness of the essence of the Ein Sof. That means that the individual, because here's, what does it mean, remember the day of it means make Shabbos holy. Because what Shabbos? Shabbos is the resting from what you did during the week. Mystically, if Shabbos is the resting from what you did during the week, Shabbos is really the pleasure of the labor. You have a project, like we discussed in the beginning of the class. You completed the project. You're resting from it. That's the Shabbos. Now what we're saying is take that Shabbos, take that resting with that pleasure that's in it, and make it holy, which means bring it up to the essence of all pleasure. Take the particular pleasure and touch base with it to the pleasure of all pleasures. Bring it into the source from where all pleasure comes from, much higher than the pleasure of the project. That means making Shabbos holy. Now, this also includes when you're making your Shabbos, when you're taking the pleasure on Shabbos morning, and you're taking the pleasure up to the quintessential pleasure, you're also towing in Friday night into that as well. Friday night, you don't have that pleasure of pleasures. You only have the pleasure. So now you're bringing that up as long, which means the Malchut, which is the main party of Friday night, the feminine Shabbos, gets pulled along with the masculine Shabbos all the way up to the essence. And that's the second verse that he brings. You should be holy, ki kadesh ani, because I am holy. Now Malchus is called ani. So when it says I am holy, it's referring to Malchut, the Shekhinah. So and it says be holy because I am holy. That's the holiness of Malchut, and we're saying that Malchus as well should become holy with the holiness of the essence. Which is the ensemble of all souls. That's why he brings the second pasuk. Kedoshim ti, you be holy, ki kadosh ani, I am holy, Malchus datzilus, which is the Malchus of Atzilus. And afterwards, the third verse, he includes both these levels. Is now being redirected back into the creation. You're touching base with the essence in an experience of withdrawal, and then boom, powerful projection of that essence outward, and that's the last thing, which says Vikarasa l'Shabbos oneg. Call to Shabbos pleasure. That means you're calling out, instead of rising into the pleasure, you're calling the pleasure out to fill and to saturate the entire supernal man above. That's the third meal. Fill all the way down to the every limb and every limb of limb, the 70, so we discussed, and all the elements of Torah, all the mitzvot of the Torah, everything becomes filled with this pleasure. The koidel base b'chinas alo b'chinas yirida v'shachav. This is what it says. You should call to Shabbos oineg a pleasure. Every time you're calling means it's not elevating. You're calling down. You're calling someone to come to you. This is a drawing and an enclothement. Orein sof. The orein sof becomes enclosed. Bize'er anpin, in the small man, which means small face. Vehu besudas agimel. That's in the third meal. This is what it's called, l'kadosh havaya, to the holiness of havaya, mechubad, who is now honored. What does that mean? Havaya, that's the ze'er anpin. Kadosh havaya means you bring holiness into havaya. Mechubad, and therefore Now Havaya becomes honored because it has within it the Keter light, which is the Or Ein Sof, is present in the Ze'er Anpin, and Shahavaya Ubchina Ze'er Anpin Bekama Makomos in many places. The Kadosh Havaya Mechubad and Kadosh Havaya Hainu Ubchina Sislapshus Or Ein Sof. The Or Ein Sof becomes enclosed. Shemelubush Bo, which is enclosed in it. Kaniskali, as we said earlier, V'dai Maven is enough to those who understand. And since Kikneses Yisrael Neskatru Gam came B'Kedushas HaShabbos, and since who became sanctioned, since the holiness of Shabbos also reached Malchus, when Friday night it begins to tickle Malchus. Shabbos day Malchus rises all the way up into Keser. Since it arrives all the way into Malchus, so that's why all the children of Malchus, which are all the souls, are also benefiting from it, and that's the reason that everybody is called to that party, and that's the reason it continues and says how the neshamas are filled with incredible delight, which means the delight of Shabbos doesn't only fill the Torah, it fills all the souls, it fills everything down to the Al-Kir. That's why he explains and says, the Chol Nishmas and the Tzadikaya, all the souls of the righteous, Misadnin, become enpleasured, Besafnuke the Atik Yomin, with the pleasures of Atik Yomin. And as I mentioned, we once read about a certain tzaddik who made a book called Sidur Shel Shabbos, that he literally would become a head taller every Shabbos. You can see his physical body changed because this added light, like we said before, the tree grows, it literally caused a change in his body. And by tzaddikim, you can see their face looks different on Shabbos. There. And the Gemara says that every person, in Jerusalem Talmud, I think it says, Ma'ar Einav Shel Adam, the light of a person's face is different on Shabbos. There's a much deeper radiance that shines. It is with the essence of the pleasure on his kliya. V'rucha chada, and one's wind or one spirit, mahu anuga, from that great supernal pleasure, salka v'nachsa. Now it says it rises and it descends. So what does it mean? Is it rising or descending? The answer is such powerful, infinite light can't reside in the world in a continuous state, because the world would blow a fuse. So the only way it can reside is it can touch it. It's like a heartbeat. This great Shabbos light, the way it manifests, is like a pulse. It can release that it can release itself into the vessels, but immediately it has to jump out because it would burn the vessels. So that's the reason why it's ratzay v'shuv. It's like a heartbeat, in and out. Salka v'nachsa, b'pchinas pirish, b'pchinas mati v'loy mati. It arrives and pulls back. Kila yachal is yashiv. It can't settle bilti ratzay v'shuv, without a ratzay and a shuv. Mitzad atzmus reimamusa, because it's so exalted. As we learned earlier, it's the secret of all secrets. And what happens when on Shabbos? Also, when you have such a level of deep, infinite perfection and divine pleasure, it becomes, we forget, at least for Shabbos, we forget kol rugza, all stress, all anxiety, all wrath, anger, all nervousness goes away. Because in the essence of pleasure, ein mekar v'shayrish, there's no root and source to anger. Remember we said on Yom Tiv, on the holidays, there is a source for judgments. That's why you have to have a guest over, poor, and so. But on Shabbos, no, because Shabbos' light is from a place way beyond where there's no dinim at all. There's no judgment. It's kiyesh tsar hepacha einik, because on a regular level of pleasure, you see, Shabbos is not the only pleasure. You can have pleasure during the week. The pleasures of Torah, spiritual, even holy, godly pleasure of prayer, pleasure of Torah. But all those pleasures are already a particular pleasure. It's not the will of all wills, the pleasure of all. It's a designated pleasure. He says every specified pleasure, since that pleasure is specified and it's defined, there can be something that is the opposite of that pleasure, because there's a definition to the pleasure. So there can be something that counters that. What is that? is like whatever it is that you're having pleasure, the opposite of it causes you pain. So if you like when it's when your pillow is soft, then if you have a hard pillow one night in a hotel, you're getting pain from it because you just want your pillow. If you like if you like it firm, and you're getting if that's your pleasure, right? And then someone switched your pillow on you, then it causes you pain. It's not just that you don't have the pleasure; it's pain. It's aggravating. I think this was the best example I've ever give in my entire teaching of 30 years of Chassidus. Bingo, the pillow, because that's so good. Like that's like an example of where you have pleasure, and when you don't have it, it's like the opposite of it. So, and that's why it says oneg, which is the word for pleasure. If you rearrange the letters, you get the word nega, which nega is an affliction. So it's so interesting. The more pleasures a person gets used to, the more affliction you have. The more perfect your coffee needs to be, because you got used to the most expensive and best roasted yesterday coffee beans that you yourself grinded. So anywhere you buy a coffee, you're miserable because it's not the coffee that you're used to, right? So the more the point over here is, the more there is a specified pleasure, the more discomfort you have. People think that the wealthy people that fly first class, they're always like comfortable. They can't most misery. Why? Because when they're flying on a plane, if they didn't land the first class, they're dying. But a person who never flies first class, okay, so he sits there, he doesn't have those miserable, he doesn't have the pleasure, but he doesn't have that misery either. It always works that way. So every pleasure carries a counter pleasure. But that's only when the pleasure became designated to something. And that's why a person has anger and rugza and wrath, because it's the opposite of the pleasure. But on Shabbos, is the level of pleasure that opens up is a level of pleasure that's the sort predefined pleasure. There is nothing opposing that. There's no opposite of that. That can be present or not be present, but it's not like there's something to contradict it, because it doesn't have definition. It's life itself. It's beyond definition. Not in the essence of pleasure. That's why the Torah compares keeping Shabbos to the entire Torah. Anybody that keeps Shabbos, as explained in Tikkunei Shabbos, that the rectification for every blemish that happens from any sin, who b'shmiras Shabbos, is through keeping Shabbos. Like it says, Shomer Shabbos machalalo, if you observe Shabbos from desecrating it, the Shomer Yado, the verse continues, you watch your hand, from doing any bad. What does that mean? That even if, God forbid, a person made mistakes and did some bad stuff and caused some wreckage, by keeping Shabbos, immediately everything is filled. Hare b'shmira Shabbos, when they keep Shabbos, mamish kilo nishmar, it's as if the person never sinned, mikol ra, from any bad. Lefisha kol ha-mitzvah saseh v'lo saseh, and explains, because all positive commandments and prohibitive commandments, which create the scenario of sin, because if you don't listen to one of the commandments, you're sinning. But the root of all these commandments are from the level of chachma, rakma chachma, and Shabbos is from keser. So the moment you bring Shabbos in, it covers for everything. Torah comes from chachma. V'chachma nimshach min ha-keser, and chachma comes from keser. Aval b'shmir Shabbos yibach in his atzmus orein soiv. The keeping of Shabbos that touches on the essence of the orein soiv. Shubchin is not just keser. Shabbos is pnimius ha-keser, the innermost of the crown. Memela nismala kol chisaroin. This fills every lacking upagam shebekeser, and every deficiency in keser. Mitzad avoinus, because the regular sins cause a blemish in keter, but which keter? The individual keter, which is the pleasure of, like we said earlier, God wants his coffee like this. If you're not doing the mitzvah right, you're giving him a lousy coffee, he's not happy. It's the opposite. So it's the opposite of, but that's when it's already the pleasure is defined. That's a regular keter. This is the keter of keser. Over there, there's nothing to oppose it. Okay, in Yud Gimel Midas Arachim, similar to the 13 attributes of mercy, are from a very deep place. Kidu as it is known with Dailameh. Elakach, and therefore mandam noter Shabbos. Anybody that keeps Shabbos, kilin noter eraisakul, as if you kept the entire Torah. Vishayesh bechlal Messiah mana, because included in this high, deeper level of Shabbos, which is the innermost of Keser, is included all the lower Kesers. Every pleasure is included in this. It's like if you can only tap the pleasure of pleasures, it includes every possible pleasure, which the mitzvahs are God's pleasure, but the mitzvahs are his specific pleasure. And Shabbos is his pleasure of all pleasure, the essence of the pleasure. The Da'ila Maven, and is enough to those who understand. And maybe just by learning this, it's like we keep the whole Shabbos. May it be that way. With this Mazel Tov, it fits that this is the 7th class. Shabbos is the number 7. 7 classes that we learned on Shabbos meals unplugged. May God unplug for us the day which is going to be forever Shabbos. Bezrat Hashem.